Hey guys, Vulkan here. Sorry about my voice. I have a little bit of a cold and it probably sounds gross. Anyway, I wanted to kick off this mini-series breaking down Diablo 4's core components, starting with the world. The world of Diablo 4 is unlike anything we've seen in previous Diablo games. It's promised to be a massive, sprawling world shrouded in hopelessness and punished by evil, something that Diablo players have grown accustomed to. But this time around, there are some key differences. The world itself isn't surrounded by invisible barriers, and you, as the player, aren't the only light in the darkness. There are other players there with you, exploring these lands, helping fight that evil alongside you. The land that was shown in the demo, Skazland, was pretty awesome. It was really cool to take in, and from the footage I saw, it was even cooler to explore and try to find all the different hidden things in the nooks and crannies. But this video is going to break down the world of Diablo 4 and how its new look will eventually lay the foundation to a game that will continue to evolve through the years. The first thing I want to talk about is the shared world. For the first time ever, Diablo 4 will feature a shared world. And now they were very cautious not to call it an MMO, but I mean, it's dangerously close, right? You're going to see other players, you're going to interact with them in a variety of ways, including trading and PvP, fighting alongside them. However, there is a caveat to the shared world, and that is that you will only see other players once you have finished the campaign objectives in the world, or you are participating in a public event. Now, I know for some this is a relief, right? You don't have to be forced to work around other players when you're trying to finish your kill 10 goatmen quests or anything like that, but this is something that's pretty interesting. For those of you that don't know, a shared world is basically a synonym for an MMO. It's essentially you're sharing your world with other players, and a popular shared world shooter was like Destiny or Warframe. Those were considered shared world before Destiny came out flat out and just said, we're an MMO ARPG. So Diablo 4 is kind of taking that same path and tiptoeing around that terminology. Next up is something that a large group of players have been asking for a long time: player versus player content. The way this works, right, you have the ability to opt in for hunting down other players and being able to become hostile in certain areas. The world itself isn't all PvP. So if you're not somebody who wants to PvP, there are literal zones you can just avoid. Now, I'm hoping these are like arena zones or things like that out in the world, where it's not where you have to go to complete quests or, you know, where there's going to be incentivized content. I'm hoping they kind of avoid that whole thing, but there are going to be certain boundaries or regions that will allow players to test their might against one another. Now, we aren't sure on the looting, the benefits, or what you ultimately gain from killing other players this time, but I'm sure there's more to come. They also mentioned they're still working through balancing and how that will all work. Now, dungeons in Diablo 4 are going to be littered throughout the realm, and they said there are going to be hundreds of different ones to explore. These will both be above ground and underground, featuring randomized tile sets. Coming with dungeons are dungeon objectives and events. These are also randomized, and they're placed randomly within the dungeon's various paths. And these events range from destroying a shrine, which leads to undead spawns, ends in a boss fight, having to survive for certain periods of time before a totem kills you. Now, dungeons are going to remain private, and I know that is music to everyone's ears, because nothing is more frustrating than going to a public dungeon and you're trying to do things, you're trying to kill the boss, but the boss is already dead, so you're sitting around waiting for it to respawn. There are some of those in Torchlight Frontiers, and that's something I don't like. I want to be able to go to the dungeon and experience it for myself. So, dungeons are remaining private, and they're going to be single player unless you enter with a party. So you don't have to worry about seeing a ton of players in there delving with you. Another thing to note, they confirmed that once inside the dungeon, there are no loading screens. You can go from level 1 to level 10 of the dungeon and not encounter a single loading screen. It is all fluid. This is something I'm really excited about. I'm glad they finally added this in, because this is going to lead to a just 100% fluid, immersive experience when you're going through those dungeons. So great work there, and we'll see how it turns out. So speaking of the giant, massive world, Diablo 4 is going to feature 5 regions at launch that cover a large amount of playable space. Now, these regions are ones that we have visited as players throughout the Diablo franchise, but it was only ever a sliver. Now, Diablo 4 is changing that by allowing us to fully explore these lands with no boundaries, no restrictions. They confirm that these areas will be between 10 and 20 times larger than the largest Diablo 3 zones that we've played. Each region features its own unique theme, giving you a different feel when you enter them from the previous one you were just in. Lastly is public events. Now, public events and world boss events were added to Diablo 4 in hopes of bringing some diversity and uncertainty to the overworld. As you explore, you're going to see a ping on your map indicating there's a public event nearby. These events are completely randomized and will automatically bring players together who are in the same vicinity. So you don't have to worry about having a party ahead of time or finding other friends or other people to try to tackle these. It pulls you all together and combines those instances. Now, these events can range from helping just a poor farmer fight off a wave of demons or something as large as a world boss fight. Speaking of world bosses, they're indicated on the map with a pentagram summoning circle, and they're meant to be large-scale events. I mean, big enough that the camera has to automatically scale out for you to see the entire creature and all the other players. Speaking of that, they are going to be bringing a large amount of players together to tackle this challenge. From screenshots and footage, I saw anywhere between 10 and 15 players fighting this thing. Now, people seem to really enjoy this new event added to the game. Here's a direct quote from the Polygon reporter Ryan Gilliam. Quote, "It was a fundamentally Diablo experience, filled with the chaotic spell slinging that I'm accustomed to. But it was also unlike anything I've ever experienced in a Diablo game. It felt like taking down a world boss with a 40-player crew in World of Warcraft, or waiting for a public event to start in Destiny 2. This is fantastic to hear because this is something that I think would work really well in Diablo. You have all of this great combat and great synergies and things like that you can really kind of make between your own build. Having that spread across a big party of players and being able to tackle these world bosses would just be a great thing to experience. Now, early demo players said they felt like they never ran out of things to do. They played the game, the same demo, right, over an hour on 5 different playthroughs, but things are randomized. They're always changing, leaving them with a different experience than they had the previous time. Wrapping up, this Diablo seems to promise a world that evolves over time and never truly becomes stale or safe to travel. As we watch how this game progresses, I do have a few concerns about what all will make it into release. If you go back and watch the announcement and gameplay trailers for Diablo 3, you'll actually see a lot in there that didn't make the cut. So I do want to be hyped, right? I am excited. I'm incredibly excited that Diablo 4 was announced, but I have to keep my expectations in check because we've all been burned before with Diablo 3. But one thing is definitely certain. I have always wanted a Diablo game that features a large open world, just full of exploration and dangers, things like that. So what about you guys? I want to hear from you. What do you think about the open world? Is this something that you think you're going to enjoy? Do you just wish that it was kind of like Diablo 3 where it was completely closed off? And I know there's no offline mode, so I mean that sucks and I really wish there was, but I want to hear what you guys have to think. Now, the next video is going to be covering loot and talents and skills, and that should be coming out a little bit later today or very early tomorrow morning. All right, guys, this has been Vulkan. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you guys next time.